The blood donation center was quiet, with only a few people waiting in the calm atmosphere. The faint scent of antiseptic hung in the air. Then, Mark, a young soldier in a worn uniform, entered. His boots echoed as he walked toward the reception desk, his movements stiff, as though carrying an invisible weight. His calm expression hid a distant, haunted look in his eyes, as if he were still stuck in the past. Emma, a nurse, greeted him with a warm smile. She was used to seeing soldiers like him, their stories often hidden beneath stoic faces. "Good afternoon. Are you here to donate blood?" she asked. Mark nodded and filled out the forms, his small smile barely visible. "Yeah, that's right." Emma handed him the paperwork, glancing at his military insignia. "Thank you for your service," she said, her voice sincere. Mark gave a small nod but didn't seem to fully acknowledge the words. As he filled out the forms, Emma noticed a quiet sadness in his eyes. Something about him felt different, like this visit meant more than just donating blood. There was a story he wasn't sharing, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this would be a moment she wouldn't forget. Emma could see the weight Mark carried, not just in his posture but in his distant gaze. She didn't press him, just gave him a reassuring smile. "I'm glad you're here. It's a brave thing to do." Mark nodded, his appreciation quiet. Emma could sense that his visit wasn't just about donating blood, it was about finding a small sense of purpose in a world that no longer felt familiar. As she took his forms and began processing them, Emma's eyes froze on a note in his file. It detailed a traumatic mission where Mark had been injured, but the injuries were secondary to the truth that hit her harder. The note mentioned Mark's PTSD. He hadn't just been hurt physically, the psychological scars were deep, and no one had really helped him. Emma's heart sank as she absorbed the reality of his pain. Mark wasn't just a soldier, he was a hero who had given everything, yet remained largely unseen in his struggles. He wasn't here for routine blood donation, he was looking for something to fill the emptiness left by the horrors he had experienced. Mark, sensing Emma's discomfort, asked, "Is everything all right?" Emma tried to steady herself, her words feeling too small for the moment. "I didn't realize. I knew but not like this," she stammered. She had no words that could truly express her understanding of what he had endured, but she knew one thing for sure: he had given more than anyone could ever repay. Mark simply muttered, "It's in the past," but Emma saw the quiet pain behind his words. In that moment, she realized that this act of donating blood was his way of still trying to make a difference in a world that didn't see his sacrifices. Emma couldn't let go of the respect and admiration she felt for him. She knew that what he was doing here was about so much more than just blood, it was about healing a part of him that had been broken long ago. As Emma prepared the equipment for Mark's donation, her hands shook slightly, betraying her uncertainty. She had always been professional, but now she wondered if this was the right decision for him. His medical history, both physical and emotional, made her question whether his body was truly ready for this. What if the donation was too much for him? She glanced at Mark, who appeared so determined. A wave of doubt washed over her. Was he pushing himself too hard, trying to give more than he had left to give? Mark, sensing her hesitation, spoke up. "I'm fine," he said, his voice firm but reassuring. "I know what I've been through, but I want to do this. I want to give back. Even if it's just a small thing, I want to make a difference." Emma's heart ached as she heard his words. She could see the quiet resolve in his eyes, the way he clung to the idea of making a difference, of doing something good in the face of all his pain. It was clear that Mark wanted to feel like he still had purpose, that he wasn't defined by the trauma he had endured, but Emma also knew that emotional strength wasn't always enough. There was a delicate balance when it came to health, and she couldn't help but worry that Mark's determination to push forward might lead him to overlook his own well-being. Her instincts screamed at her to stop, to ask more questions, to make sure that this was the right decision for him. But at the same time, she could see how much this act meant to him. For a long moment, Emma stood frozen, her mind torn between her responsibility as a nurse and her deep respect for Mark's courage. The tension between them was palpable, and Emma knew that whatever she decided next would have lasting consequences, not just for Mark's health, but for the understanding of what it meant to sacrifice, to heal, and to move forward. Just as Emma was about to set up the blood donation equipment, she paused. A final glance through Mark's file revealed something that hadn't caught her attention before, a small handwritten note in the margins, almost overlooked. The note was from a psychologist who had been treating Mark for PTSD. Emma's eyes widened as she read it carefully. The words once again hit her like a punch to the gut. The psychologist had written about Mark's deep sense of guilt, about how he had been carrying the weight of the lives he couldn't save. The note explained that Mark had been struggling with intense feelings of responsibility for the trauma he had witnessed and caused, especially during the mission in which he had saved so many civilians. Mark had been seeing the psychologist for months, but there was something different about the way the note described his emotional state. It wasn't just about his past trauma, it was about redemption. According to the note, Mark believed that by donating blood, he could atone for the lives lost on that mission, the ones he hadn't been able to save. In his mind, giving his blood to others was a way of paying back for the guilt he had carried for so long. It wasn't just a simple act of kindness for Mark, it was a desperate attempt to make things right, to somehow redeem himself for the horrors of war that continued to haunt him. Emma felt her stomach drop as the full weight of his actions became clear. She had been so focused on his physical well-being that she hadn't considered the emotional toll this could be taking on him. Mark wasn't just donating blood to help others, he was donating blood to help himself, to try and erase the ghosts of his past. And in doing so, Emma now understood, he might be setting himself up for a much deeper fall. She knew that Mark's mental state was fragile, and this donation, while noble in his eyes, could end up being more harmful than healing. She glanced at him, her heart heavy with the weight of her realization. He had been so determined, so resolute, but now Emma wasn't sure if he truly understood what he was doing, or if he was simply trying to numb the pain he couldn't escape. The guilt, the shame, the emotional scars, it was as though Mark had been using this moment of donation to fill a void that no amount of blood could ever heal. Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing with uncertainty. She couldn't ignore what she had just learned, but at the same time, she didn't want to take away the one thing Mark had latched onto in an attempt to heal. She could see how much this meant to him, but she also saw the danger in it, the potential harm it could cause, if he wasn't ready to face the truth of his feelings. The tension hung in the air, and after a long pause, Emma made a decision. She couldn't let this moment pass without talking to him, without ensuring that he truly understood what he was doing. She couldn't allow him to proceed with the donation if it was just another way to escape the emotional pain he had been carrying. "Mark," she began softly, her voice steady but filled with concern, "are you sure this is the right thing for you? I know you want to help others, but I need you to understand that donating blood, it might not fix what you think it will." Mark looked up at her, his face set with determination, but she could see the vulnerability behind his eyes. There was a flicker of doubt there, hidden deep within him, but he didn't let it show. "I'm sure," he said, though his voice faltered slightly. "I need to do this. I've been carrying this guilt for too long. It's the only way I feel like I can make a difference." Emma's heart broke as she saw the raw honesty in his face. Mark wasn't just trying to save others, he was trying to save himself, even though he didn't know how. She felt the urge to hold him, to comfort him, but she knew she couldn't offer that. She was his nurse, not his therapist. Instead, she offered him something more difficult: honesty. "I understand," Emma said softly, meeting his gaze. "But Mark, there's no quick fix for the kind of pain you're carrying. Donating blood, it's not going to take away the guilt, it's not going to erase everything you've been through. And I want you to make sure that you're doing this for the right reasons, because you feel ready, not because you think it'll make the past go away." Mark's eyes dropped to the floor, his shoulders slumping as the weight of her words sank in. The quiet vulnerability he had tried to hide now took center stage. "I don't know what else to do," he whispered, his voice breaking. I need to do something, anything, to make up for what happened." Emma stepped closer, her voice filled with compassion. "You don't need to make up for anything, Mark. You've already done more than enough. But you deserve to heal, not to hide behind acts of guilt. You deserve to find peace, but it has to come from within you, not from a blood donation." For the first time, Mark's shoulders relaxed slightly. He met her gaze, and in his eyes, Emma saw something she hadn't expected, a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was there. Mark was beginning to understand that healing wasn't about what he could give away, it was about what he could give himself. Emma stood silently, as Mark settled into the chair, his eyes still carrying the weight of everything he'd been through. She knew that this wasn't the easy answer, the quick fix. But sometimes, healing wasn't about taking the direct route, it was about allowing someone to find their own way, even if that path was filled with pain. As a nurse, Emma had seen countless patients try to move forward in their own way, even when the journey was unclear. She made a decision then. Mark needed this moment. Whether or not he realized it, the act of donating blood was his own form of healing. It wasn't about redemption, it was about him finding the strength to move forward, piece by piece. She couldn't stop him from taking that step, but she could guide him with kindness and empathy. With a soft smile, she began preparing the donation equipment. "You're doing a brave thing, Mark," she said, her voice gentle but steady. "Not everyone has the courage to face what you've been through. But here you are, giving something of yourself to others." Mark looked at her, his face showing signs of relief but also lingering doubt. "I'm just doing what I can," he replied quietly. "I don't know if it'll make a difference." "You're making a difference, even if you don't see it yet," Emma reassured him. She carefully inserted the needle into his arm, her movements precise. She knew this was a delicate moment, one where her words and presence could offer him some much-needed comfort. As the blood began to flow, Emma stayed by his side, talking to him softly, making sure he felt safe, cared for. During the process, Mark's posture slowly relaxed. It was as though the simple act of giving something that he couldn't take back, allowed him to release some of the tension that had been building within him for so long. He closed his eyes, letting out a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was doing something that might actually help. Not just others, but himself too. It wasn't a complete fix, but it was a step, a small, meaningful step toward healing. As the donation came to an end, Mark's face seemed a little lighter, as if the weight on his shoulders had lessened, if only temporarily. Emma gently removed the needle and applied pressure to his arm, making sure he was comfortable. "You did great," Emma said, smiling at him warmly. "I know it wasn't easy, but you did something truly selfless today." Mark managed a small smile in return, his eyes tired but softer than before. "Thanks, Emma. I think this was what I needed." Emma nodded, knowing that this moment, small as it seemed, had given him something more than blood, something that would stay with him longer than any physical donation. It was a small victory in a long journey, but a victory nonetheless. As Mark stood to leave, he turned to Emma once more. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself," he said quietly, his voice still carrying the weight of his past. "But this helped." Emma's heart swelled with empathy as she looked at him. "You don't need to forgive yourself all at once. You're already doing the hardest part, choosing to keep going, even when it feels impossible." Mark smiled, a genuine, albeit faint, smile. With a nod of gratitude, he walked out of the donation center, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Emma watched him go, her heart full. She knew that his journey wasn't over, that healing, for someone like Mark, would take time. But in that moment, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for him, for the courage he had shown, and for the small part she had played in his path to healing. As the day went on, and the steady flow of patients continued, Emma reflected on the weight that soldiers like Mark carried, often unseen, but always there. They were the ones who fought for others, sacrificed for others, yet so often they were the ones who went unnoticed in their own struggles. Today, Mark had given not just blood, but a piece of his soul. And Emma, though just a nurse in a small donation center, knew that in her own way, she had witnessed something deeply profound, a true act of selflessness. It wasn't just about the blood donation, it was about the quiet courage to face the past, to keep moving forward, and to take the first steps toward healing. For Emma, it was a reminder of the strength that lay within every person who walked through her door, and the difference one act of kindness, no matter how small, could make. Mark walked out of the donation center with a quiet sense of pride, his steps a little lighter than when he had entered. The weight that had burdened him for so long felt just a little less heavy, as if the act of giving, both literally and emotionally, had allowed him to release a piece of the guilt that had consumed him. Emma watched him leave, her thoughts lingering on the quiet courage he had shown. She hoped, deeply, that one day he would find the peace he so desperately sought, a peace that could only come from within. As the door closed behind him, Emma took a deep breath. The day continued, patients came and went, but Mark's visit stayed with her. It was a reminder of how sometimes the smallest acts could hold the greatest meaning. Blood donations, often seen as routine, could be so much more. They could be a stepping stone in someone's healing journey, a chance to start fresh, to release the past, and move forward. Though Mark's road to healing was far from finished, today marked a glimmer of hope for him. And for Emma, it was a quiet reminder of the difference kindness, compassion, and the willingness to listen could make in someone's life. Sometimes, even the smallest gestures held the potential to change everything. As we close Mark's journey today, we're reminded that healing isn't always a straight path. Sometimes, it's found in small, seemingly simple acts, like donating blood, where the weight of the past can be momentarily lifted. Mark's story shows us that even the smallest gestures of kindness can make a difference, not just for others, but for ourselves too. If you were moved by Mark's courage, don't forget to share this story with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength and the power of giving. And if you're able, consider donating blood yourself. It could change someone's life, just like it helped Mark find a small step toward healing. Thank you for watching, and remember, healing starts with kindness.